welcome to Delectable Perceptions. And you're here with Ty, and I have a wonderful guest all the way from across the pond. Can you introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Faida Jayla, and I am indeed from London, UK. Should I tell the people a little bit about what I do?
Yes.
Well, first of all, Tainetta, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be on the podcast, and I always love talking to you. And for your listeners who I'm not so familiar with, let me introduce myself. So my name is Faida. I am a TV producer, specializing in documentaries and where I can, Black history documentaries. And I'm also the founder of a platform called Freedom is Mine, where I teach African diaspora histories from all over the world. So from Asia, Latin America, Europe, the Middle East, you name a country, and I can tell you some Black history from there. So yeah, that's what I do. Black history is my thing, and I'm very excited to be with you today. Talking about something completely different, actually, but I'll try and squeeze some history in there.
Yes, and that's how I met you. I met you because you were teaching my class, and I was excited. Yeah. My students were like, "She got somebody from London." I'm like, "Yes, I do."
Exactly.
And then I asked you what food that I gave you comfort. You said an English breakfast. I have no idea what an English breakfast is. I've never had one. So just tell us, what is an English breakfast?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm honest, I was quite surprised because I thought that like everywhere knew what the English breakfast was, but it was really interesting to hear your perspective because now I realize that it's only really known over here. So essentially, the English breakfast, it has actually several names. So you might hear it be called the traditional breakfast, the full breakfast. Sometimes it's called a fry up because a lot of the ingredients are fried. But the English breakfast, if you use any one of those names, people will know what you're talking about. Tell your listeners to take notes for when they come to the UK.
You're ready. I'm ready.
Yes. So when you come to the UK, pretty much any kind of pub you go to, like if you think of a traditional British pub, it's kind of like a bar, but it's more of like an older establishment where you'll sit down. They also offer food. There'll be drinks. They might play the sport. These are very kind of traditional places where people come to hang out, and especially because it gets cold here in the winter. Yeah. So people love after work or on the weekends to come to a British pub, and you will always find on the menu an English breakfast. It's also something that we prepare at home. Any hotel you go to in the UK, they'll offer an English breakfast, like pretty much any brunch place as well. So essentially, because I told you I was going to try and get some history in there.
Tell me about the history. I need to know.
I did my reading because I had no idea kind of the origins of it. I just know that it's very popular here and very common. So this started off in kind of the 14th, 15th century. Right. Breakfast was really the reserve of the British elite classes. So the wealthiest in Britain, with their huge estates and their great big mansions, they were the ones that started the English breakfast because they would often have a large meal before they went on hunting expeditions. Okay. So in the UK, we have a tradition, shamefully, I think, but we have a tradition of fox hunting, which has been like the reserve of the elite. I think, I don't know if it still happens now. I know there were lots of campaigns against it. It might still happen, secretly. But anyway, it was a tradition well into my lifetime even. And this has been going for hundreds of years. So the British upper classes, they would have a huge breakfast before they went on their hunting expeditions. That's where it started. And then, so that was the 14th, 15th century. When we get to kind of like the 18th, 19th century, and we're into the Victorian era, the upper classes continued to have what was known as an English breakfast, but the reasoning behind it kind of changed. Right. And this was an opportunity for the upper middle and upper classes to essentially show their guests, to show off their wealth by offering them like a big breakfast or like a large meal. Essentially, the English breakfast is a very, very big breakfast, so you don't really need to eat until like the end of the day.
The evening.
So it was an opportunity for the Victorians to show everyone else how rich they were. It's kind of, I guess it's like the Victorian version of Instagram. Like if you can't take a selfie, You
Look
cook
at
a
my
breakfast
meal.
instead. Yes, look at my meal. Exactly.
Oh my goodness.
And then things get really interesting around the Edwardian time. So this is the end of the 1800s, beginning of the 1900s, up until the First World War. And then you start to find the English breakfast being offered in hotels
Hmm.
and other establishments. So when people would go on holiday to the UK, they would be able to have an English breakfast in a hotel or in like a nice restaurant. And it really started to become the domain of the middle classes, not so much the upper classes. So the middle classes really then started to indulge in the English breakfast. And then that brings us up to the 1950s, so post World War II, where things radically changed. And the English breakfast as we know it today was began to become a staple of the working classes, and it's really remained that way. So everywhere you go now, like every single pub, there's lots of different cafes. Here we call them greasy spoons. Don't ask me the origin of the name because
So
it's
you
not
going to the
cute.
greasy spoon fighter?
Yeah, you go to the greasy spoon. I know the name is not cute, but the food is good.
Oh,
So yeah, it's very much become like a working class staple dish, but everyone enjoys it. And the reason why I chose it as my comfort food is because it's the kind of thing that my mom would always cook. Like if she just wanted to do something filling and easy, but something that we would both enjoy, she would always cook a fry up. And probably at this point, I should introduce your readers your listeners, sorry, who don't know what an English breakfast is, to what it actually consists of. So essentially, it's kind of like you can do whatever you want, but there's some staple ingredients which you'll
mhm.
traditionally find. So you'll definitely have sausages of some kind. If
Okay.
you are vegetarian or plant-based, like I am, it will be vegetarian sausages.
Mm.
Um, for those who eat meat, it will be meat sausages. Then you would have bacon. So again, if you're plant-based like me, you can get veggie or
Vegan
vegan
bacon.
bacon, right?
Yes.
Which I maintain is still delicious. Um,
You said it's
I
not delicious.
No, it is delicious. It's very good.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. And then you'll have fried eggs. So you'll have like one or two fried eggs, usually two. You'll have chopped and fried mushrooms.
Okay.
Mushrooms are a key ingredient as well. And then you'll have baked beans. Are baked beans like popular in the States?
We eat them usually like on barbecues, like when people have like barbecue
Right.
chicken or something that has some beans on the side.
Yeah, exactly.
You
So
eat it for
beans are very
breakfast.
filling, they're full of protein.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll have baked beans in the fry up, and then you'll usually have like a grilled tomato. So you'll just chop a tomato in half and then grill both sides, and that'll be it. And then from there, you can kind of improvise. Like some people will have one or two slices of toast with butter. Some people have hash browns. If you're a purist, which I am not, then you would not be having hash browns.
But
But I
what's the
think
curious? Why wouldn't they eat hash browns?
because I guess they consider it like an import from the US, and it's not really
Oh, that's
something that,
hilarious.
yeah, like traditionally that we would have had over here. But hash browns are delicious, and I am not a purist. So all day, every day, hash browns in my English
I thought
breakfast.
they hash browns. Like, what's the difference?
Yeah. Yeah. And then some people have what's known as black pudding, which me being plant based, I'm not 100% sure how it's made, but essentially it's kind of like a flat disc. It's usually black in color or very dark brown, and it's kind of like a slice of sausage. But I'm not entirely sure what goes into it, like the seasonings and so on. But there you have your English breakfast, traditional breakfast, full breakfast, fry up, whatever name you want to call it. So those tend to be the standard ingredients. You really will find it anywhere and everywhere in the UK. And if any of your listeners are coming to the UK, then definitely check it out.
Beautiful.
But it's something that you can kind of improvise according to what you have in the house. And so, yeah, I think I was really kind of reflecting when you asked me the question, when you posed
Mm-hmm.
the question. I was like, what could I suggest? And um, I think the English breakfast is a good one because
Mm.
it's something that's the meaning has changed over time. It's definitely become a dish of the people. It's very cheap to make, it's very easy to make, and it's definitely filling. It hits the spot. So that is my choice.
And you named like 7 or 8 ingredients because I was like, this.
Yeah.
That's a lot on one plate.
It's
And
it's a big portion. And so now you can see why if you have that in the morning, you would not need to eat again until the evening.
so I probably would almost feel, I'm just thinking because I don't eat a lot in the morning, but for those who eat
Mhm.
breakfast, and then like here in the US, we don't eat beans in the morning time because,
No.
because people probably think they're having gas all day.
That's
They're
a
like,
good point.
so that's what we were pre-thinking. So like, a typical, American breakfast can be like so many different things, but a lot of people eat eggs in the morning, like you mentioned,
Mhm.
and the sausage, and then sometimes potatoes and toast. But then when you added the black sausage, not black sausage, black pudding. I thought it
Mhm.
was pudding, but it's
No,
actually
it's
meat.
savory. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think so in the States, what would be kind of like, do you have like a typical kind of brunch dish? Or is
Yes.
there a typical kind of like when you go into a I know when I was in New York,
Hmm.
everyone was telling me about grits, but I never actually got to try any.
I don't. So I'm not a grits eater, and the
No.
grits is just like cornmeal,
Mm.
and it's like, so whoever's listening, y'all, and it's, America, we got our different regions: the north, the south, east, and west.
Yeah.
So in the south, people ate a lot of grits, and I am
Ah.
not a grits eater. I do not like the way it tastes. It's like a big old debate if you put like sugar and salt in it. I'm like, don't put it on my plate at all. I don't want it. Don't eat it. Don't.
Yeah, you're like, I'll
I like
pass.
oatmeal. I like oatmeal, sometimes cream of wheat, and then I learned like oatmeal is porridge. I don't know, is it the same thing?
Yeah, pretty much here it's the same thing. It's porridge. But I guess for us in porridge, I mean, maybe it's the same over there. We'll add like syrup or sugar or something to give it a bit of flavor.
Yes, and I will tear up some porridge. I'm telling you. My mother made that, and but I have my own way of making it. So, thinking about the English breakfast, so can you think of any stories or any type of memories you had around it? And I know you said it's like a typical breakfast, but maybe going into somebody's house and they did not prepare it right, or maybe like somebody had the English breakfast and they left out, like you said, the mushrooms, or they left out the tomatoes, and they just had like a little bit of something. Like, how would you react if they was like, that you're in the UK, you're making this breakfast, and you're like,
Yeah.
how dare you do this to our breakfast?
Wow, I feel like now the English breakfast is kind of being like gentrified a little bit because when you go to like brunch places, they're adding like avocados or like kale or
Of
something,
course.
and the price is just going up and up and up. And I'm like, no, no, we're not today.
What is this?
I'm like, you don't need to be experimenting with these expensive ingredients and then trying to charge me 15 pounds instead of five. Like, no.
Wow.
So yeah, I think now I mean, it's a dish that you can kind of experiment with anyway, but I think sometimes it's kind of, yeah, it's been gentrified a little bit, especially in London. But in terms of like stories about it, I wouldn't necessarily say I have like one particular story,
Mhm.
but I traveled on and off for about 8 years in my 20s. So I literally went traveling from like the age of 20 to 28 on and off. And I was spending extended periods of time in Latin America in various different countries where obviously the English breakfast is not known or
Yes.
served. And I just remember like every time I would leave, I would have one in the airport before I took my flight. And every time I would come back, that would be like the first thing I would want to eat the next
Oh,
morning would be to have that for breakfast. And just for the nostalgia, really, because it's like, it just reminds you of home and it's
hmm.
something you associate with home. And you can either have it at home or you can have it out. But either way, it's like it's an experience. So yeah, I think I have that kind of association with it. And that's why it brings me comfort in a way.
And now, have you made it for someone that was not from the UK? Like, what do they think of
Great question. So I actually had a Japanese friend come to
it?
stay with me. This was kind of a crazy story because so I have my YouTube channel where I teach Black history, and he has a YouTube channel where he teaches Japanese culture for foreigners.
Oh,
And we only met over the internet because I followed another like Japanese history and culture channel, and he was trying to like steal the subscribers from that channel.
wow.
So yeah, because he was just starting out. So then he was like sending me a message asking me to follow his channel. So I just followed
Mhm.
it like to be nice or whatever, because you know it's a struggle in the up in these YouTube streets I'm like, we need to follow each other and support. So I followed him, he followed me, but we didn't really know each other. And then he was asking me for advice on how to grow his YouTube channel. And I think my advice was too good, because then his YouTube channel grew bigger than mine.
Look at that. You gotta follow.
And I was like, not that it's a competition. I was like, I need to take my own advice more seriously. But he was like watching the metrics and the analytics and everything. And I'm not really like that. I'm just like, I want to teach. And if people enjoy it, they enjoy it. Mm-hmm. But anyway, and then he messaged me about a year later to say he was actually coming to the UK. And so I had to go and collect this boy from the airport with his huge 2 suitcases. And I was like, if you want to, because he then had to travel on to Glasgow in Scotland, which the train journey is 5 hours.
Okay.
And his journey from Japan, he'd gone to Japan, to Thailand, to London, and that journey was 12 hours. And I was like, there's no way you can do that back to back. Like, you can sleep in the spare room at mine, and then in the morning you can take the train and go to Scotland, and you'll be like refreshed and had a good night's sleep. So I went to collect him from the airport. It was one of those things where I didn't really know like what he looked like properly, because he was wearing a COVID mask. And then this guy just comes up and is like, Faida. And I was like, who are you? And I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, and then obviously at mine for breakfast, I cooked him an English breakfast, because I was like, I don't really know what else to make, and I have the ingredients, and it's quick and it's easy and it's nutritious. So obviously he's experiencing it for the first time, and I've had it like 500 times.
Exactly.
And he was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, etc., etc. And he was like taking pictures and putting it on Instagram. And I was like, dude, this is just breakfast. Like, this is nothing. Like, if I knew he was going to put it on Instagram, I would have done like a nice little, presentation or something. But I was like, you cannot be here. Yeah. But he enjoyed it. And yeah, it definitely set him up for his 5-hour train journey to Scotland. So yeah.
So now you can get a Japanese breakfast if you decide to go to Japan.
So I hear, but I was having this conversation with him, and apparently there's not a lot of like plant-based cuisine in Japan. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot of vegetarianism or veganism. And obviously, Japan being a multitude of islands, a lot of it is like fish and seafood based. So I don't know how well I would fare. But
get some broth, put some broccoli, and that's your breakfast. Okay.
Can you imagine? I'll have to go over there and be cooking an English breakfast for myself.
Everybody be like, what?
What is happening here?
Like I told you, why is it beans? Am I right?
Yeah, exactly, for breakfast. But yeah, I know British food gets a very bad rap internationally for being like not very nutritious and not very exciting. And it's terrible. The food here is terrible. But for that reason, because I think British cuisine in itself is not very exciting, we do tend to adopt a lot of dishes from elsewhere. So like if you go out to eat, you would never have you would never order British food. You would have like Mexican or Thai or Indian is so popular. Like everyone eats Indian food here. And Pakistani. That's my favorite cuisine in the world. Because we have obviously it's a sad part of British colonial history, but happily we do have a big Indian and Pakistani community in the UK, very, very large and very well established. They've been here for a lot of generations. And so I think Indian food has almost become just a subset of British food for us. Like if I travel for a significant period of time and I don't have Indian food, I start to lose my mind. Yeah, and it was so funny. I was in Mexico for a while. I was teaching there, and I went one day to an international food fair that they were having, and each stall had food from a different country, represented a different country of the world. And I remember I went to the British stall and they were serving Indian food.
That's hilarious.
I was like, yep.
British food. It was the Indian food.
Yeah. But obviously it was like under the British stall and with the flag and everything. And I was like, this is just so ironic. Like when you try to explain
You
it to
stole
people.
the food too.
I know. And you know what's so bad is that I was reading in a newspaper article the other day, which was saying like the word that we use for a lot of Indian food is like curry, right? We say I'm going to have a curry, or I'm going to eat a curry, or make a curry. And actually, from what I remember from this article, there is no word in any Indian language for curry.
It's not.
No, because each dish has its own name, and there's regional differences. There's like religious differences in diet. Each dish has its own name, but there is no word like curry. That's really just something that we use. I guess it's kind of like a post-colonial term, just to refer to like Indian cuisine in general, which actually just curry, and it really like dismisses all the different nuances and the cultural aspects for like generic curry. So I throw my hands up and say I'm guilty of that. Like, but it's a teachable moment. But yeah, definitely something that we need to work on. But it's my favorite food.
You said the curry. It made me think about island food because we have our Jamaica, Trinidad here,
Right.
and they eat a lot of curry. Like I'm thinking about curry chicken, curry lamb, curry fish, curry goat, all that. I didn't think about Indian food when you said curry though.
But that's because Jamaica and other Caribbean islands under British colonial rule had such a big influx of Indian indentured workers. So essentially, Britain abolished slave trade in most of its colonial territories around 1833, 1834. After that, there was like a shortage of cheap, affordable labor. And so the British government to many of these places brought in indentured workers from China and also from India. And so that's why the Jamaican motto is out of many, one people,
right?
Because there are so many influences. There's so many different ethnic groups in Jamaica. There's so many influences, like roti, for example, is an Indian dish that was imported to Jamaica. Lots of different ingredients came from India to Jamaica and have been incorporated. And even things like curry goat, curried lamb, as you say, these are all, it's like a fusion between the different ethnic influences, between the African influences, the Indian influences. It's truly a cultural and a gastronomic melting pot. I wouldn't claim to be an expert on it, but yeah.
You're making me hungry thinking about it, because now may give me some curry after I talk to you. So
yes, absolutely.
This curry place right by the school I'm at, so I may go over there and get something.
Yes, why not?
So now you on the call with me, and I got to ask you some different questions. So I'm thinking about this. So if you were to describe yourself as a type of food, what type of food would you be? Like, I am this type of food.
Oh, that is such a good question. It's quite hard to answer. I'm like, first of all, would I be sweet or would I be savory?
Come on, you can be so many different things.
I can be both. No, I think I would be savory. I think I would be something colorful. Definitely something plant-based, because I am a vegetarian. And actually, I just celebrated my 21st vegetarian anniversary. So we did like a little potluck at my house, and everyone brought a dish. Yeah. And I think it's something spicy. I don't know. All signs are pointing towards curry again.
So spicy, savory, something that did with like an Indian type of cuisine.
Yes.
A little chili in there.
Yeah. Filling, delicious. Yeah, I would love that.
But that's you. Sometimes I think what type of food I would be. So I do like spicy, and I like sweets. I don't even know how that combines, like a sweet spicy thing. Let me see. It's a lot going on in my brain because I like to cook and I like to eat.
Yeah, so many options. Well, you never know. When I was in Mexico, for example, they often combine sweet and chili. So, for example, you can get like, what would you call them? Like lollipops? What would you call
Oh, the
them?
candy, the chili candies. I never.
Yeah, the chili candies. Or when I went to McDonald's in Mexico, they gave me like the smoothie, but it had chili sprinkled on it.
The tahine.
It's really nice.
It's oh my goodness. I know. Yes, I'm that. Whatever that flavor is, that sweet, spicy. So I'm
Yeah,
sweet, but it's like if you keep testing my sweetness, I get spicy on you really quickly. So
has
that's
a kick to
me.
it. Yeah.
And I tell people I will smile and be spicy at the same time. So don't test me. Yes. Okay, so I got some more things because I'll ask someone else this. If you could choose a superpower, what superpower would you choose? Or like how would you use it?
Oh, that's such a good question. I mean, I'm really into history. So
Mm.
I think it would have to be going back in time,
Ooh.
which I know is kind of cliche, 'cause everyone says that, but I would really like, I spend so much time, especially teaching Black history. I
Mm.
spend so much time like fangirling over these amazing Black pioneers from all around the world. And I would love to just go back in time and see them in action and
Ooh.
ask them questions and just pick their brain and get and just I think because the history books only tell so much, and
Right.
especially when it comes to Black history, not to get too
Mm.
political, but a lot of our history has been like written or rewritten by European scholars. So I
Mm-hmm.
think it's really important when it comes to telling our own stories. um, and yeah, I would absolutely go back in time and meet a few
Time
people.
traveler. Ooh, you gotta be careful with that because you don't want to change the time.
This
Ooh,
is true.
yes. I always, I'm trying to think of my superpower because I like to do so many things at the same time. So I would probably, and it's probably dangerous, like to multiply myself.
Such a good idea. And then you
So
could
if
be
I
all
have to
different
be
places
like,
at once.
oh my, and I talk a lot too, so I would have to figure out a way to not drive my children and my husband crazy. But I talk a lot, so I would have to like multiply myself and do what I want to do and then like come back.
They should be honored to have not one, but two or three versions of
Exactly.
you.
Exactly. Because they always trying to get me to do different things. So
Yeah.
you're gonna say, help me with my homework. Okay, okay, they go to another number one. Okay, to another
Yeah.
do you
Number
want me to do
two.
stuff outside, 3, 4 outside doing this? So I want to do so many different things. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, why not?
Yes. If I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you for being on my show, girl.
Oh, thank you so much
Yes.
for having me. I really enjoy our conversations and I love like bridging the cultural gaps as well.
Yes.
So if any of your listeners are over in the UK, I definitely encourage you to try an English breakfast.
Hmm.
And I feel like I know that you don't recommend it, but I feel like I have to try grits now.
No, this is the thing. I always tell people, just try it. Try some grits. Um, that's just not my preference.
It's not my portion, but then at least I can say I've tried
Exactly. So people
it.
like to try grits and then they add stuff on top. Some people add fish, chicken, see like a
Oh,
shrimp
wow.
thing. They get like crazy with it. They add like sauteed onion and peppers with it. Um, I
They're
know, and
really inventing.
I'm not. So, and a lot of this came from slavery. Like grits is a very
Yeah.
cheap, like it's a very cheap meal. It's this cornmeal. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And then you just cook it, and people either add butter to it, and then some salt, and then that's it. So that's why they would say grits
Mm.
because you can make a large pot of it, and they can probably have like some toast on the side, or
Yeah.
people eat grits with eggs, and then that'll be the meal for the family. I mean,
Well,
like
do
a.
you know what? It's nice that people can kind of personalize it according to their own tastes as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the fact that it does have historical significance, and especially for Black communities, is really
Yes.
special. But yeah, I will try
Do it. I
it
mean, live your life. And I'm
and
gonna try
feedback
English
to the group.
breakfast. I'm gonna try English breakfast with some avocado because
Ah, yes.
I'm gonna get the gentrified one because I love some avocado. I do.
Bougie.
I had some yesterday and I had some the day before.
Yeah, I mean it tastes great. It's not so great when the bill comes.
Oh yeah, I buy it. I gotta go to the grocery store. I
Yeah,
buy my own. Is it expensive over there? Because I don't know, like where
it
it
can
get
be. I mean,
from.
we're in Ireland, and so pretty much everything is imported. So it can be expensive, but I mean it's affordable, and I do cook with these ingredients. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's when I started traveling in Latin America and I started seeing like the actual prices for like fruit and vegetables, I was like, this is a whole different, and the taste is just so much
Yeah,
fresher. I was like, this is from the
it's so
source.
cheap. If you go somewhere where they're growing that plant, it's so much
Uh-huh.
cheap.
And
So
it just, the
much.
taste is completely different. So but yeah, all of that to say, we do we yeah I do cook with avocados at home, but you know, you have the gentrified version, have the bougie version, it's fine.
Yes, people putting their kale on them. Like, take this off my plate. Take this off my plate.
That's where you draw the line.
I'm gonna put this on here. But I understand they have to add their own personalized touch, like I told you,
Yeah,
Fritz. And let me know when you here in the States, okay?
I will
Because
do, absolutely.
I am in Indiana, and that's central Indiana, but central United States. But if you go down to the southern part, it's a different type of dishes, and it's just amazing. Every part, like the West Coast got their dish, East Coast got the chowder, and then South is like a lot of heavy food, like the chicken and the. It's just a lot of heavy food. Like you gonna gain weight if you if you go down, gain weight. So anyway, I appreciate you, girl. I appreciate you.
Oh, thank
Yes.
you. Likewise. Thank you so much for having me. It's always a good time speaking to you. And
Yes.
yes, I would love to check in again soon. And thank you to your listeners for tuning in. I appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to Delectable Perception. You will see us on YouTube. All right, y'all, and you all have a blessed day.